Started. I know we're competing against the build that's going on back there and everybody wanting to get a fresh cup of coffee, but I think some more will start trickling in, and we're glad to have those that are with us right now. We're given the monumental task of following Kara, which is not an easy thing, and I would definitely say that I expect that build, the habitat build, to be done about a fifth of the time as normal. If there's any complaining, I think people need to check their pulse. So we'll do our best, but I'm excited to have these guys. They're great partners of GRIDSMART. My name is Matt King. I'm the Director of Product here at GRIDSMART, and I'll be moderating today's panel, which is the theme is Fiber Isn't Scary. I'm personally excited to have our two guests here today. They both bring decades of experience working in the fiber industry. Both AFL and EtherWAN, the companies which Seán and Derek represent, have been instrumental partners of GRIDSMART in the development of our SmartMount 2025 system, which I hope by now you guys have gotten a chance to kind of see in our fiber workshops we've been doing every afternoon. If you haven't, this afternoon at 2 o'clock, they're doing another kind of demo session of the connectors and the cable and our board design, which is pretty cool, and we've kind of been standing room only so far. So I encourage you guys to look into that. So the goal of the next 50 minutes is to settle any nerves that you might have in regards to fiber by hearing of its various applications and advancements, as well as giving you an opportunity to engage with these subject matter experts. So Seán and Derek will both present a few slides, make you feel better about fiber and geared up about deploying it all over the country, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seán Adam. He's the VP of Marketing Strategy and Innovation at AFL. Do you have a clicker? It's over here. It's right here.
That's the clicker?
Yep.
What do I do to click? Oh, just
I think just the green. You're good.
Is this on? How do I turn this on?
Is he on here?
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? All right, so my name is Seán Adam, and as he mentioned, I work for AFL. Just real quick, it's interesting. I'm up here talking about kind of why fiber isn't scary, and to let you know, actually, my background is copper. I didn't actually come into the fiber space until 2010. One of the things I like to say is kind of prior to 2010 and joining AFL. The last time I had done anything with optics was my SATs, and I'm actually pretty certain I got all those questions wrong. So it really wasn't where I came from. It really was actually more the copper side and understanding those challenges. But I've actually had the opportunity over these last number of years to really learn about and become comfortable with fiber, and that's part of what we'll share with you. Okay. So let's start with kind of just real quick. Who's AFL? All right, so we are, our parent company is one called Fujikura in Japan, but we're actually based out of Spartanburg, South Carolina, and we're really fiber people. All right, we have cables that go all the way up to 6,912 fibers in a cable, and we can do 44 million fiber terminations per year. So that's a lot of stuff. So we kind of know this space. And we've been part of the evolution of the space that really actually has taken it from where fiber was scary, right, to the fact that it's very, very different today. We cover products from cable to connectivity to equipment to services. So we tend to try to understand kind of that full spectrum, which really then allows us to really help work with companies like GRIDSMART to really develop solutions that are different. So let's So if you're thinking, fiber, you generally think of companies like Verizon or AT&T, and this was actually a talk done by Verizon, and we love fiber. We do love fiber, by the way. And often what you think about is those are the big guys that are doing fiber, right? That's kind of like why it's scary. You've got to be a Verizon, or you've got to be a large like Amazon Web or Google or Facebook. Yeah, those are fiber guys. What's really, really interesting is that it is those large companies that have driven fiber optics to be simpler, right? Because they actually had to deploy so much. They had to make it something that was much more approachable, much more durable. right? So then if you start to think about where is fiber? Did you know that there's actually fiber throughout our electric grid? That all those high power lines actually have fiber optics running down in them through actually what we call optical ground wire. There's actually fiber running down the middle of it because the electric companies have used it as a highway for years, decades. And then there's a key thing of really how do we kind of close that digital divide? They tend to say that there's somewhere on the order of 20+ million Americans who do not have access to broadband service, right? And closing that digital divide is very much being built on fiber. And so these are small cooperatives. These aren't all super large, electric companies, right? These are small cooperatives that are actually installing their own fiber networks, right? So this stuff actually has to be approachable. The folks that are working on them are not super fiber techs. And by the way, it's in the medical space. Fiber optics going into our bodies. It goes into catheters. It's enabling new capabilities that have never been there before. So you kind of think about durability as think about where fiber's going. It's in the oil and gas space. We measure temperature. We measure seismic. And so from the durability, think about getting a fiber all the way down into an oil well. It's used by our military. And often they're actually deploying fiber in a moment's notice, right? They're actually driving their command vehicles out, right, into a situation where often they can be under fire, and they're deploying a fiber optic network right then and there, right? So it's something that is quick to deploy, right? Very, very durable that we can depend on. Right? And it's really part of our smart cities, and it's part of the intelligent building space, which is really emerging, right? As everything is really becoming more and more interconnected. And it's on all of our streets. It's coming to all of our corners. It's actually part of what GRIDSMART is doing, right? Which is really I kind of view it as part of that smart city investment, right? Around the fact that fiber will be, right, as they say over here, it will be the connection by 2025, the most standard connection to everything, right? So, we're going to have a great talk here, right? But really the thing to take away is fiber has been around for a long time, but it's actually everywhere. It's all around us, being touched in ways that a lot of us never thought. And that's it.
So thank you, Sean. Before Derek gets up, I'd like to introduce you real quick. Derek's a good friend of GRIDSMART. He was here at Intersect last year, and we're happy to have him back. So Derek Johnson is the Senior Business Development Manager at EtherWAN. So the floor is yours.
So change. All of us in this room are going to be experiencing profound change in the next 10 years, right? EtherWAN Systems has been around since 1996. And what was interesting about EtherWAN is that it was founded by NASA engineers. They needed a device. It didn't exist. They created it, and EtherWAN was born. What's interesting is there was actually fiber optics on the cameras that were used on the lunar landing, right? So the fiber optic game has been around for a long time. One of the first semaphore devices, meaning light signal to communicate, was used in the 1790s. So what you're seeing now is a confluence of events where we're changing really quickly. If you remember back when you were probably children, the computers that we used were just like toys compared to what we have now, right? And the costs have tremendously plummeted. And now we're talking about the 5G world, right? The explosion of bandwidth connecting all these devices together, the plummeting of costs. Who here remembers what they paid for their 56K modem back in the day? Anyone? It was about 70 bucks. Remember that? I remember when I was first in business, I thought I was a rock star because I had a 56K dial-up. You guys remember that? Get off the phone. I want to get on the internet. Right? So we've come a long way. And what you're going to see in the next 10 years is this proliferation, this increasing pace, where we're going to be living this hyper-connected world. And here's the thing about change. It's going to change. It's going to occur with or without you. So from a career perspective, It's up to all of us in this room to take the initiative, to learn, to take the time, to study, to take the certification courses, to get the books, to do the reading, to watch the videos. Because this change is going to happen really quickly. And if you don't partake in the change, you're going to be left behind. I want to share with you a quote from the futurist Alvin Toffler. And if you remember only this from our talk today, you'll do well. It says here, the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is the world that we're in. It's time for us to learn some new stuff.
Thank you, Derek. So we're going to use both of their slide decks as kind of a springboard for some questions, and I encourage the audience here to engage with us. I've got some questions, but I hope they don't all just come from me. So at this time, does anybody have anything before we even get started? If not, if you just want to raise your hand, we've got some mics that I'm sure that we'll bring around to you. And yeah, it's his voice. It's soothing. So let's just jump right into it. I've got a couple questions here. So you guys talked about a lot of different applications for fiber. Can you kind of double click on some of those and give us some more examples of where fiber is being used today? Maybe some unique cases that we might not know about that would be maybe surprising to know. Maybe Sean, you go first, and if Derek, you want to pick up afterwards.
Sure. So there's actually one I heard about this week relative to being unique. A lot of what's driving fiber is as I mentioned, is really how do we really close that? How do we really provide broadband access? We all want to consume data. It's the constant that's today, and we're actually working on a fiber optic cable that is actually going to be bringing broadband capability to the far north of Canada. And the only way to actually get the cable there is, anyone see Ice Road Truckers, the show Ice Road Truckers? I'm not joking here. It is the only way to get the cable up there. You have to wait until the roads freeze. You then run the cable, right? The spec on the cable, by the way, is, and I'm also not kidding here, it's got to be moose-proof, it's got to be bear-proof, and it actually has to be able to basically kind of withstand being hit by snowmobiles. So they're going to draw this cable out across these ice roads. But then when it thaws, the cable actually has to be able to sink into the thermofrost and then refreeze and unfreeze and refreeze and unfreeze, right? And so that's kind of a cool one where no matter where you are in the world, right, fiber is going to find you. It's going to be there, and we need it because it is the best medium for actually really closing that divide. Think about trying to actually do that with copper. You'd have repeaters that would be eaten by moose every couple hundred yards, right? So that'd be really, really hard.
Yeah, so to add to that, there's that resilience in fiber that is one of the reasons that's driving its ubiquity, right? And the cost is coming down quite a bit. You're going to be hearing a lot, if you haven't already, about the IoT, right? The Internet of Things. Everything is going to be connected. And what's interesting for us in this room is that, with our ITS background, that line, that demarcation between ITS and IT is going to just disappear completely. All of us are going to be IT, right? And so, because fiber is easier to use, it's as to his point, it's more resilient. I've worked on projects. We're going to get into this in a little bit with military applications. It's the future, and everything is going to be connected in a way that it's hard for us to even imagine. It's interesting because, just a little random trivia for you guys, the actual first Internet of Things, the first device that was connected to the Internet was one of the founders of a TCP IP protocol connected his Sunbeam toaster to the Internet in 1989. So this has been coming for a long time.
So a couple of things you said kind of pushed us into this next question. So a theme that I've heard with one of our fiber trainings that we've been doing in the afternoon has been a concern over durability. When there's something like fiber that we've got different traffic professionals I've used in various different degrees, and they've heard of it, and there's kind of it's this big thing. And so a lot of the questions have been about durability, versatility. Speak a little bit about your experience using it, and it's kind you talked about in the far north, it has to be durable to work in that application, but can you give some other examples or how you would approach that question about durability and versatility of fiber.
Sure, and I think a bit kind of goes back to the slides I show. You see the broad expanse, right? It goes everywhere from the tundra to the desert to inside our bodies. So from a kind of an extensibility of what fiber can do it's actually pretty amazing. But then from the durability point of view, it really is the most future-proof medium. We're nowhere near tapping out if you put down single mode fiber, and actually Carl and I were talking about this earlier. You can actually, what you can do with that is nowhere near tapped out. And so, the ease that's actually come with actually how you put on you're able to put on connectors, you're able to route it, the different options that are there, so you can deal with if a rodent's trying to eat it, it's which is often an interesting comment. You might say a moose is a problem, but really in a lot of what situations we have, and I heard some conversations here, is very large rats like to eat everything actually, but it really is it's very durable, and the technology has advanced. At one point, if you were to wrap a piece of fiber around a pencil, the light would shut off. And a lot of you may kind of remember that. If you kind of, man, if I just slightly, turn a bend, this thing's not going to stop working. Of course, copper's simpler. Copper's not going to do that, right? No, that's not the case now, right? We actually have what's called bended. It's called bended sensitive fiber, right? You can wrap it around a pencil as much as you like. You now can actually take it anywhere, route it through anything, and you're not actually going to be impacting that signal, right? And you look, we said as I said, my background is actually copper, and I got a chance to look through Carl's presentation. Thing that used to keep me up at night is ground loops, right? Forget fiber. Ground loops was a bloody disaster. I've had stuff go up in smoke. You don't have that with fiber. You don't have the interference with fiber. You don't actually have the need for repeaters in fiber, right? It ends up having this overall resiliency within the environment it's in. That is just really hard to approach with any other medium that's out there.
And then there's a security component to fiber, right? So back in the early 2000s, I was involved with a military project for the Navy Marine Corps Intranet, which to this day is the largest intranet in the world. It was a multi-billion-dollar project, and the military decided, hey, we need something that's secure. Why? Well, copper is easy to tap. It's a very unsecure medium. So they went with fiber, and they put in an unreal amount of fiber in the ground for this private Navy Marine Corps Intranet. And they, unfortunately, kind of got really expensive. Now it's cheaper, but these guys dropped like $9 billion worth of equipment, including fiber. So for your perspective, in your organizations, the fact that it's a more secure medium, when you start blending that line between the ITS department and the IT department, the security thing is going to be a huge issue. And again, from a career perspective, anything you could do to become more proficient understanding the security that comes in information transportation is really going to go a long way towards helping your careers.
So for these traffic professionals, what are some resources, or where could they be looking for training or to learn? After Kara's presentation, I feel like we could all probably point to YouTube and learn about it. But are there any places, are there any resources that they could be going towards to shrink the gap in knowledge or whatever that, to gain some comfortableness?
Yeah. So when I learned what I did about fiber optics, I actually had to go and get those big books by a company called Q. I don't even know if you guys remember that. I mean, it was like Ambien in a book form. And to your point, luckily we have better tools. There are some certification courses out there that I would recommend. I can't name any off the top of my head, but there's quite a few out there. I think GRIDSMART offers a class. Whatever GRIDSMART offers, take it seriously, because I've seen some of the stuff and the effort that they've done to put together some classes, coursework to educate all of you, and it's top notch. Go with GRIDSMART. A lot of this stuff too is take the initiative on your own. Don't wait for your organization to send you to something. Find it. If there's a seminar or certification, do it. Again, from a career perspective, the more knowledge you have, the more certifications you have along these lines, the more job stability you're going to have and the more desirable you're going to be. So for a long-term career, this is your future. And again, going back to that quote I mentioned about the illiterate of the 21st century will be the person who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. So whether it's YouTube, an official certification class, go to the bookstore, get a book, read, whatever your preferred medium of learning. Some people need to see, some people need to listen. Just pursue it. I think the biggest advice for you guys is to be proactive. Because when I got into business over 22 years ago, fiber optic technology, Wi-Fi, all this stuff, bandwidth management, all the stuff that I learned, most of it was just self-taught.
Yeah, and the learning is key, and kind of closing the knowledge gap is key. And actually, one of the offerings that AFL has is actually a company that's called Light Brigade, and they actually do training on, and it's actually not training on AFL fiber optics. It's not what it's about. It's actually training on the application, right? Really learning about fiber optics. Actually, their very first class is called Fiber Optics 1, 2, 3. Right, it kind of teaches you all the basics. What's the important things, where it's come from, some of the history, right? And then how do you splice it? How do you put on a connector? How do you test it? Make sure it's okay. And then they offer from classes that are that can become very, very specific, right? If it's the fact of you're really trying to understand how to really deploy a fiber optic system in your town, in your city. They have classes that are targeted at that, and actually targeted at really the different levels, right? Because for those of you who are actually in the field, there's a set of capability that you need, a set of knowledge you need. You need to be able to do it hands-on. At the same time, you need the guys who are on the boards that are running your cities to have a set of knowledge and asking the right questions. And so they actually have a set of classes where the first day and a half is geared towards really talking to the councils, right? Teaching them up. And then the rest of it is they all go away. They go back to their desks, right? And the folks that are out there doing the real hard work and up in the bucket trucks and laying the fiber, they actually get to learn and do hands-on, because it is key. Closing that gap is absolutely key.
You bring up a really good point, because I read a study recently about change, right? About change being hard, and this study was based on people being told, "Hey, you have a health issue. And if you don't change it, you're going to die." Now, most of us would say, "Okay, doc, what do I need to do?" What was interesting about the study, though, was that 28% of people didn't change. For whatever reason, they just, making some healthy lifestyle decisions, exercise, eating a different diet. 28%. Why is that relevant to you guys? Well, hopefully you're not in that 20%. And just as important, in your organization, you might need to be the evangelist in your organization for change. Because if you're dealing with a bureaucratic, calcified mentality, that makes your life more challenging, right? So even if you do take the courses, get the certifications, learn the stuff, you're still, you might have some challenges with getting your organization to change. So then it's up to you to be that evangelist internally and to get allies. So not only do you have to change and grow and change and learn, but then you have to get some confederates to work with you to change your organization from within. That's really also critical.
And that's a great point, and I think that's great encouragement for this group and anybody that's listening. And I personally think that the purpose of Intersect and this panel specifically and these trainings is to give that comfort to be able to go back to your organizations, wherever you line up in your organization, to be that evangelist, to have a little bit of understanding when you raise your hand or you push some initiative forward, to say, "I've seen this, I've heard the experts, I've seen it, I've got my hands on the cleaver and the connectors, and I understand how this works." So I think that's a great point. I'm glad that's gotten brought up. At this point, are there any questions from the audience before I move forward with my questions? Anything specific that you're thinking about? Because I'm sure if you're thinking about it, there are others. Kristen, do we have a mic, or I don't know. I'm sure we can hear you, but
I'm just curious, are both modes of fiber going to continue to stay prominent in the industry, or is it going to lean towards one way or the other? I mean, I know there's different applications that are better for both, but
Absolutely. And that's a really good question. You know, it's funny. There's always an adage in the fiber optic space that one day copper's going to die, and you always seem to be able to get more out of it. And the more recent one is multimode's going to die, but they always seem to be able to get a bit more out of it. But what I would say is really there really is going to be a continued move towards single mode fiber. You know, it's one of the things you have with the single mode fiber is the fact of it truly is the most future proof, because the active components on either end will be able to continue to change and do. And you're not going to have to rip out your infrastructure where, you know, one of the reasons why you've continued to see kind of multi-mode migrate through multiple generations after generation is because it actually had to keep up with the actives. And so if you look at what's being put in by those large telcos, if you look at what's really going to be driving 5G, you look at what's in those large data centers, where data centers actually, you know, when you kind of thought about on-premise data centers, you know, GRIDSMART maybe even used to have a little small one here, don't know, right? That'd be multi-mode. I can tell you that's all going single mode now. And so it really is the trend. It's not that it will ever, I think, completely go away, but the world has become more and more dominant towards single mode fiber. And because of the fact it's the improvements that have happened in it and the band and sensitivity that have gone into it, it really actually has also become the cost has come down, and it also has become easier to just kind of work with, right? Multimode was a whole lot forgiving, but you think about the data rates that we're going to need as you're thinking even kind of beyond the applications here towards kind of that smart city environment that your municipalities may be thinking about. It really is around the fact of a single mode fiber is really the thing that's yet to be fully tapped out.
Yeah, I mean, and there was a part where 20 years ago the multi-mode utilization was predicated on the low price, shorter distances, low price. A single mode was popular, but it was so damn expensive that it deterred most people from implementation. To his point, now the cost has plummeted, that it's preferred medium.
Great question. Anybody else say any more?
Is it the fiber industry's goal to eventually replace all copper, i.e. your HDMI cable to your TV, all Cat 5e and office complexes run into your desktop? At what point are you going to try and penetrate that market? Because I think everybody's sold on fiber as infrastructure. When do you trickle down to device level?
Sure, and that's always that's a really good question, right? And I guess from kind of being in the fiber industry, it's like, yes, we would love to achieve kind of world domination. A lot of that actually ends up being driven by certainly driven by those end components, and you know it's part of what you end up with is, especially as you're starting to kind of get into buildings and everything. You know, not a lot of us actually have fiber into, let's say, our computer. Right, you don't see that as much, though. Really, actually, the last medium, the most closest medium, is going to tend to be a lot of wireless, right? And I think what you'll actually see is everyone. I was going to ask a question. I assume here, who here, or actually, I wouldn't ask that. Has everyone here heard about 5G? Right, wireless technology, right? What I will tell you though is that 5G is absolutely impossible without a fiber backbone. One of the most interesting things is we are transferring to a world where, though actually the thing that may touch us the most is the wireless connection to all those Internet of Things. It's like the last 100 meters and everything in between that. And you even think about it today. You send a text to your child or your spouse or your friend, right? From here, you're going about 100 meters to an antenna, and then you're going kilometers, right? You might be going around the world on fiber, right? So relative to, will we see fiber become like the dominant connectivity within like a home, our homes and everything? I think what you're actually going to see is fiber into the homes, and then kind of that wireless transfer, and then your standard kind of power architecture. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So wireless is last mile.
It's very very much. You'll have this combination of either fiber as your last mile or wireless as your last mile. And because 5G will be so transformational and really will not be able to achieve that transformation without fiber, that will be kind of that final pull through. That's just says I just can't pull it off. you know, like with a hybrid fiber coax system. There's certainly a lot of talk that says, look, we can do 5G because everyone would love to be on that bandwagon. And it does bring along power, which is always an interesting thing that kind of comes along. Fiber doesn't come with its own power in general, though we do hybrid cables that let you do that. You know, I think what you'll see is even when they talk about it, they're like, yeah, but in the future you'll do a fiber overlay and maybe just use the power that was in the hybrid fiber coax network, and you'll actually stop using the copper communication lines.
Yeah, I mean, eventually you have to connect to something physical, right? So there's that part. And then as far as like within your home, I know I just, you know, I bought a TV recently, and I have an optical line going to my sound bar, you know, right? So there's it's a natural evolution. It's like, how many people on their laptop still have a disk drive? No one? See what I mean? You do? One guy out of, right? But it's just like one of those things that one day you're like, oh wait, where's my disk drive? It's gone. So it's going to be one of those things.
Great question, Jeff. In the audience, yep.
Had the special order it that way. Do you think that the connection of, you know, components and devices and with fiber being the infrastructure and pushing out wireless, do you think it's going to lean toward like RFID chips to bring all these things together?
For short distances, yeah. You know, I mean, the RFID chips, I know that Las Vegas uses that for baggage claim and stuff like that. I worked on a project with Las Vegas, gosh, 9 years ago. They had RFID chips embedded in like your tag in case you lose your suitcase. So, I mean, that's coming. But it's shorter distances.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned Internet of Things, and one of the phrases that I've ended up saying is, you know, we'd like to say that we have Internet of Things, and I think what we've really had is things that are on the internet, right? We really are going to transform into a world where we have this mass mesh network of devices that are actually talking to each other. We might talk to them periodically, but it's going to be all about them talking to each other. The GRIDSMART solution is really about, right, a very, very advanced algorithm running on a set of technology that is talking to other things, right? And that will continue. You just think about our factories, you think about our homes. That's where all of that communication will happen, and it's called mass machine communication. You know, one of the things you'll hear about, right, if you kind of look into 5G, is that's one of the things it unlocks. It says mass machine communication, which is machines talking to each other. And so you will have RFID. You'll have it. You know, you're going to have it where the car is going to know that you're on a crosswalk and not hit you. And that's all going to happen through a wireless connection into a strong, dense fiber optic network.
Any other questions?
Are they still developing another spectrum of light? Because right now, fiber is using one spectrum of light, correct? There's talk of using multicolored light.
Absolutely. It's actually, so that technology has been around, but it's generally been used in what the telecoms would call the core networks. So the networks that are kind of going across the country. The reason we're all starting to hear about it a lot more now is it is moving out into our space, into what we tend to refer to as the access network space. And what he's talking about is the fact that you know, most of us, if you're dealing with single mode fiber, you're thinking 1310, 1550 wavelength. You might have an OTDR, if you're familiar with that, that's shooting it at 16 something to make sure you don't mess up what's on it. You actually can put down multiple wavelengths, like many wavelengths. DWDM has gotten up to at least 160 different colors of light and I think even beyond on a single fiber. So the other thing is, you think about deploying a fiber optic network, and where I say it's future-proof, it's because your next step after that, by the way, is there's all these other steps. You can split it, which is actually what, if you've heard of Verizon FiOS, right? What that is, that's a PON architecture. It's the fact that a A single fiber comes down and splits out into 32 fibers.
That's passive, not active.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's all passive, right? All passive. And then you can actually put on multiple wavelengths. And so you think about, is there a bandwidth limitation? Someone actually said earlier, I forget who I was talking to, but there's like, we're nowhere. I think it was Carl. I think you said it's infinite bandwidth is what we're approaching. And it really is, your limiter is actually the actives on either end. And that's actually where a lot of your cost is, right? You know, why hasn't CWDM, which is called coarse division wave multiplexing, or D, so dense wave division multiplexing, gotten out there more? It's not because of the fiber. Well, it's certainly not because of single mode fiber. It's just because either end has been so bloody expensive. But that's coming down as well, right? And you can do passive filters on your receive side, you can do passive filters. That's not bad. And so you're down into, can I drive that many wavelengths? So yeah, you'll be seeing that a lot more. It's key to what we're all talking about. But the fiber you lay down today is going to be able to do that when you need it. And that's and you don't need, you know, for the most part, most people don't need it today. But your infrastructure you're investing in today is going to be able to do it.
How many people, by show of hands, are comfortable working with fiber right now? That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great.
Good for you guys.
Note I didn't raise my hand.
So you guys are ahead of the power curve, you know, and a quick plug for GRIDSMART. I mean, kudos to them for being ahead of the curve as well. So by, you know, hitching your wagon to their horse, you guys are going to do really well.
So that kind of leads into my, I guess, probably my final question. Yes, that's what I was going to say. So, you know, if we think about the investment we've made in Smart Mount, what are you pointing at?
Almost.
I said I had one more
You're
question.
really close.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Is there a life cycle on the fiber?
Good question. And generally, really not. It's especially it really as I said on the multi-mode, the life cycle's been driven by the fact it couldn't keep up with what you wanted to do with it, and so you'd go and have to rip out the infrastructure because it was it just didn't have it. For the single mode, no. You'll hear about places where actually I was hearing this week. If you if you think of like a football stadium. Do you know they actually rip out if you look at like AT&T Stadium, that's all fiber optics. That's enabling it, because if you think you get 80,000 people, right, into one location, everyone doing a selfie. You've basically created a small city in this small footprint, and you actually have to make it its own cell tower. So the entire stadium is a giant cell tower, which is actually fiber backed, because that's what you have to do. They actually rip out their network like every 3 years. But it's not because the fiber wasn't capable, right? It's just because the way they've ended up looking at it is the fact that, one, they started with multi-mode, now they're moving to single mode, so part of its mindset. But they're sitting there going, I actually have to lay down more connection points, right? So I need a lot more actives, right? And that's actually what ends up driving. It's really the fact of it's just keeping up with that. And really, what they rip out more, actually the fiber for the most part sticks. They're actually having to rip out all their copper. So every 3 years, they rip out any copper infrastructure to put in new stuff, and most of the fiber sticks, and then they actually may overlay even more, right? But I personally haven't heard of a situation where you're sitting there saying, I've got to take out the fiber because it aged. Certainly not with our modern fibers. So you had situations way early on in fiber where they had, you know, hydrogen absorption and all this stuff, and you'd have to be, you know, but think about it. You're putting these down into an oil well, right, to make a measurement. You can't pull that back up. This isn't like, you know, push down. You didn't drop it down. You drilled down. This thing is in there, and it's got to be there for as long as we're pulling oil out of the ground. They're not going to make an investment that says in 10 years I've actually go figure out actually how I'm going to dig down next to this oil well and accidentally pop it, right? And so that's where it kind of drives it. You know, that's why they used it on the moon. So.
Isn't that because of shielding though?
So the glass itself isn't going to break down, right? And so and there certainly is no electric interference it can have. And as long as, the environment it's sitting in, like the one that I said that we're putting up in the tundra, right? That's gonna, a lot of the technology a lot of the technology AFL ends up working on, it's actually more in the cabling than the fiber itself. Because it is really around how do I cable this for the right application, right? How do I make it to where you could put it near high power lines and not actually have there be arcs across it, but at the same time I'm going to put it up in the bloody tundra, right? And so a lot of that is technology that we work on, which is how do I cable it such that it actually is a very long-lasting jacketing solution. Hopefully moose-proof. Hopefully moose-proof.
And rat-proof.
And rat-proof.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry I missed you. I thought Carl was just yelling at me about something. I'm used to kind of ignoring him. I thought he was pushing me. Where I was going was that I thought he was looking at our billboards over there and pushing us towards our new campaign, which, as you guys all know, GRIDSMART has made a very large investment in Smart Mount 2025 and getting our system to use fiber. And it's with these partners. It's with the work with EtherWAN and AFL to get us to this point. So we're confident that fiber is the future of connectivity at the intersection. You'll see our slogan and most things in GRIDSMART fashions. We couldn't wait that long. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that, on Smart Mount 2025 in the intersection. Just any thoughts you might have on that.
Well, at a higher level, we talked a lot about just fiber, right, and where it's going. And on the ITS side, the drive for bandwidth, for sensors, for information, the cameras, the ability to read license plate readers, the myriad of things that are coming down the pike that are connect with GRIDSMART's product and the cameras and what have you. The pace is tremendous in all the things that they're doing this day, again, ahead of the curve. It's impressive. I think that if you want to pair up with a great company, obviously you guys are here, so GRIDSMART does great stuff. But this next evolution for you guys is going to be tremendous in terms of what it does for your organization. Now I'll add one thing to this, and it's kind of a final thought for me. It's think about your individual careers. Think about your career, where you want to be in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. What technological skill set are you going to need to become indispensable in your organization? Think about those terms. I guarantee you that this is part of it.
Absolutely, and I think really you guys are ahead of the curve. I think that the Smart Mount 2025, really kind of concept and positioning is spot on. It really is. Fiber optics and fiber optic connectivity is really going to be the primary connection by that time frame throughout our world. Will copper completely go away? No, but it's going to be really, really short because it just doesn't have it doesn't have what we need to. It's sometimes we talk about it as you kind of said evolution, but I would actually say that we are actually truly at a paradigm shift in what we're going to be able to achieve. And I know everyone always says that, right? But really, bloody well, I think we're kind of starting to approach that Jetson type reality. Uber is actually testing flying taxis that will be autonomous. Right?
That's terrifying.
Isn't it? So though actually traveling around the world, I've seen some taxi drivers where I really wish it was autonomous and flying. But you just think about that, where it's no longer just kind of talked about. They literally are testing them. I saw one of the tests on YouTube. Actually, she talked about YouTube, right? Taking off from the top of a building. So you just think about where we are truly actually going to go through this revolution, and I think you guys are right there at the forefront, which is fantastic.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I know we got to get on to our training schedule. I just want to thank you guys again, Seán and Derek, for being here and making the journey to Knoxville to spend some time with us. And hope you enjoy the rest of your
Our
day.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys. Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
I think.